Well, match number 60 is usually when the IPL league stage tends to come to an end. Now we have the prospect of Punjab Kings and Royal Challengers Bangalore both looking to secure a playoff spot. Punjab need to try and stay in it. It may still not be enough. On the other hand, RCB find themselves in a curious position with Rajasthan Royals with an inferior net run rate. They do not want the Delhi Capitals to cause any sort of late league heist in that playoff race. So they want to try and win. Mixed fortunes for both these two teams over the weekend. They've had some days off now. RCB managing to successfully defend 192 against the Sunrisers at the Wankhede, where at the same ground the night before, Punjab Kings failed to defend 189 against Rajasthan. Sets up nicely for a contest between these two teams that gave us one of the great games of the tournament in the early parts when Odain Smith happened. He's moved on and we saw a high-scoring thriller, the D.Y. Patil. Whose night is it going to be? We'll find out on Maruti Suzuki Presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Timeout, powered by Kunine 5G. It's a very good evening to Daniel Vettori, who, like these two teams, have had a few days off. Looks all clean and whatnot. Did you miss us as we entertained Mr. Manjrekar in your chair for the last few days?
I must admit I did. Like walking back into the studio, I feel good. I feel comfortable.
You know who always feels comfortable returning to Cricket Info? He's our prodigal son. And he's wearing a Virat something t-shirt. I can't see the whole thing. He's going to tell me what Virat... Oh, the run machine, Kohli. Now, Aakash, take it away for... I welcome you and I'd like you to start by explaining your t-shirt for today.
Oh, well, I can't explain this t-shirt on camera for commercial reasons. You may not like it, but... this t-shirt is
is Virat Kohli paying you? Is Virat Kohli paying you as an ambassador?
No,
okay.
No, he's not. It's
his nightshirt.
No. So okay, so let's focus on the game. Yes, Virat Kohli, of course, a first ball duck in the previous game. Of course, you want to get that right. It's a brilliant game. Nicely set up because see, RCB, as much as they want to qualify, they must also understand the importance of finishing in the top two, because in the history of this tournament, only once a team has gone on to win the tournament after finishing outside the top two. That was 2016 Sunrisers Hyderabad. No team before them, no team after that has been able to do that. So you can go to 18, get these two wins, improve your net run rate that you should when you're winning, and get into the top two. I think that should be the only focus of RCB. So put your best foot forward today. And PBKS, they have their fortunes in their hands at the moment. And I don't mind actually them batting first. I don't think they have the batting to chase. They should actually put 220 if possible.
Interesting you say that, because if I have to start reading body language of captains, some of them are giving a lot away at tosses. Some are thrilled to win tosses. Some just seem resigned to the fact that they're not going to win, like Sanju Samson. Kane Williamson's got more of a poker face on this. Mayank Agarwal seems so disappointed that he's lost another toss. And then when he comes up to speak, he says, it's a good toss to lose. We don't mind batting first.
Yeah, he's diplomatic when he talks, but he's already given away all his emotions before that. I'm not sure how many he's lost, but it feels like every time he just seems exhausted by going to the toss. Maybe he shouldn't even come from now on. Just pass it on. And
Didn't
pass
that
the
happen
team.
in 1 year? Someone else came to toss. Did Faf du Plessis do that once? Bring somebody else to toss the coin?
I thought Mahela and Sangakkara did something, maybe in a World Cup where someone was on their last warning, so they changed over. But it's illegal, isn't it? I'm sure it's illegal.
I have no idea, but I do know
illegal.
that this whole toss luck thing plays a part. But on a serious note, Aakash's point of this being maybe a good toss to lose for Punjab, who been a bit confused as to who to send out when. Now they're batting first. Does that make it any easier? Because there's still the challenge of how best to use Liam Livingstone.
I think they'll still confuse themselves whether they bat first or second, because of the batsmen that they do have. I think that's their problem. They've got 5 very good batsmen in those positions, so that sometimes leads to confusion. You get caught up in matchups with Rajapaksa and his left-handedness. Mayank, maybe you don't want to leave him down at 5 because that's not a strength. So all of a sudden, we see Liam Livingstone at a 6 in some stages with Jiddu Sharma coming in. So whatever happens, Livingstone can't come below 4 to give themselves a chance of chasing down setting whatever score they need to tonight. I'm
sure they've discussed this too, Aakash, in terms of how best to achieve, the right value for everyone, looking at the top order, top-heavy order that they have. What would you advise in an important game, a must-win game? We'll come to that Harpreet Brar selection in just a moment, but since they're batting first, would you be tempted to put Mayank back up? He doesn't quite look right at number 4.
And he should actually be playing in this team now as a floater. He's a gun player. I love him to bits, but the fact is he is woefully out of form. Allow Johnny Bass to be right at the top. He's at his best, scored a 15 the previous game. I won't change that. Shikhar Dhawan has scored enough runs, perhaps their highest run scorer this season. You've got Bhanuka Rajapaksa, who's a left-hander, who obviously is a striker, and he's better off when the ball is coming onto the bat, and don't put him too much later in the order. Liam Livingston, I totally agree with Dan, has to bat at 4. If he can't bat at 4, then don't pay 10.5 crore, 12 crore, whatever you paid to the six hitting machine. If you think he's good enough only for the last 10, 12, 15 balls, then you've got your selections wrong. I understand that as a captain, you don't want to concede, you don't want to give up, and you don't want to say that, I can't score runs. But Mayank Agarwal and Anil Kumble, they have to be a realist and say, you're not batting well, that's all right. If we have a collapse at the start, please go ahead and stem the rot. Like happened yesterday with the CSK. Of course, that's where you want Mayank. But if things are going all right, we don't want Mayank to bat at all. Do not bat. Send Jitesh Sharma before Mayank if push comes to shove. So I think that is where they stand. I thought they messed it up in the previous game when Mayank went at 4. It had to be Liam Livingston. It was the 11th over when they lost their second wicket.
What I find interesting here is it seems such an obvious thing. Livingston has to bat 4. And I'm still trying to understand why franchises don't do the obvious thing that we go on and on about on our show, and everyone pretty much does. When you look at those batters, are you also looking at a team which has struggled, has run out of gas in the last 6 or 7, and then you look at those 5 and you say, who's likely to give me 70 of the last 7, which I've also failed to get? And then you say, that's got to be Livingston, because I don't trust Agarwal or Rajapaksa or Johnny Bass to do that job. Now, how much merit is there in that argument?
Well, I think teams fall in love with the Andre Russell type scenario of chasing down 40 off 3 overs. And then they think, well, who's the person who can do it, like you say? And then I go, Liam Livingston's the only one who can do it. So let's leave him for that potential situation. If everyone else bats well, it's a bonus, and we may win without even using Livingston. But it almost becomes a safety blanket to have him sitting there thinking he can do the job done, but get the job done. But that's an exceptional amount of pressure on number 6 to come in there and do that. And we see it time and time again. Tim David's been put in that situation. Andre Russell's potentially, and maybe Pollard, the only players who have done it consistently. But there's no reason why these guys aren't good enough to do it from number 4. And therefore Livingston can get a 70 off 30 balls, or who knows, he may even get 100 batting at 4, rather than just this small sample size of bowling that they get to face. And the expectations on them are huge, and it's hard to live up to.
Okay, well, we'll have to see. Only time will tell when Punjab send Liam Livingston. It tends to be almost a more confusing point when they're batting first, as we saw in their last game against Rajasthan. They got 189, they failed to defend it. And that's when you start thinking of whether they could have used their resources perhaps to get even closer to 200, try and out-bat situation teams with the kind of batting that they have. They have made a change, though, to their bowling in this game, as we pointed out a little while back. Harpreet Brar is back, somebody who we were curiously seeing as to how he bowls to Virat Kohli in what was RCB's first game of the tournament, and Kohli seemed to take him on. Since then, a lot has changed. We're now looking at a Virat Kohli who himself is just struggling to get the ball away. He's had 3 first ball ducks. He's making rather philosophical arguments of how the game seems to have taught him everything now, since he never had this sort of run in all his years with his success. But Brar comes in for a Sandeep Sharma, Aakash, who has an excellent record and matches up really well against the likes of Kohli and Faf du Plessis. Yet Mayank says the change is to do with matchups. What do you make?
Oh, well, you obviously have given more weightage to A matchup and not to that B matchup. I think that's the only explanation because you're absolutely right. Sandeep Sharma has troubled Virat Kohli. Sandeep Sharma has troubled Faf du Plessis. Sandeep Sharma might have actually dismissed Glenn Maxwell a couple of times as well, but then he's not there. Harpreet Brar's opening game in the IPL was against the RCB. I remember that was the game in Ahmedabad, Narendra Modi Stadium, where he picked up 3. I think he dismissed Virat Kohli, Faf du Plessis, not Faf, AB de Villiers, and Glenn Maxwell in 3 overs, back to back, and that was brilliant. But then I think they've further weakened their bowling, if nothing else, because if he had come in place of Rashid Dhawan, I would still understand that you're like for like replacement, you're replacing an all-rounder with an all-rounder. Here you've actually replaced a bowler with an all-rounder. Harpreet Brar is an all-rounder, can give you 4 overs, but there is a good chance he might not be able to. So he'll give you 2 or 3, and he's a decent finisher. He can actually like tonk the ball. But why would you do that if your bowling is already paper thin? Their bowling isn't really great, Sheikh. So slightly strange team selection, I'd say. But then these are things you do when you're desperate.
No, absolutely. I mean, we have spoken about Arshdeep Singh's success, but Arshdeep Singh is being effective in a specific period of the game. Sandeep Sharma in the last 4 games since he's played, Dan, has gone for 40 twice and has gone for less than 5 and over twice. And he seems to lose out to Harpreet Brar. Now, would you agree with Aakash? If the change had to be made, it had to be for Rishi Dhawan. And what makes sense? How do you make sense of him coming in for Sandeep Sharma?
I think Aakash is 100% right. The change had to be like for like, and to bring him in for Rishi Dhawan, then you could mix and match a little bit. At the moment now, who's bowling death for Kings? They're going to put a lot of pressure on Arshdeep and Rabada, so then those middle stages become even more vulnerable, whereas Sandeep Sharma actually gave them something up the top and through the middle, and potentially when he goes for 40, it's when you leave him to the back end. He's like Bhuvanesh Kumar, where he has a fantastic record most of the time when you keep them out of that back end and they can remain an attacking option. When he's at the back end, he has to nail his Yorker, and execution is difficult. So it puts a lot of onus on that. So I can't understand the change. I think like Aakash said, the easy one was to come in for Rishi Dhawan because there's enough batting there to cover. So paper thin, I think, is the right description of their bowling attack.
Okay, makes sense what you can of that selection. On the other hand, RCB go into this game unchanged. They're quite happy with the team that's now 1-2 on the trot in spite of the lack of runs from Virat Kohli. Faf du Plessis seems to be hitting more than missing at this stage. Rajat Patidar has been quite the find for them, and it holds them in good stead going into this. Given that they are going to be bowling first, let's spend some time on Wanindu Hasaranga, who, in spite of having hot and cold games, now sees himself as a real challenger to the purple cap of Yuzvendra Chahal, which has essentially been Chahal's purple cap to lose for a large part of it. But a 5-wicket haul in the last game essentially keeps Hasaranga more than running. And he also is now at 21 behind Chahal's 23. We also saw his phase-wise bowling a little while back. That seems to tell us the story too in terms of where Hasaranga has been effective. Those numbers at the death seem to be increasing. When you take those numbers, economy of 8 overs, Hasaranga being given a slightly different role as these pitches change a little bit?
Potentially not. I think he's just taken wickets through his middle stages, so there's actually been a chance for him to come in and attack maybe in the 16th, 17th over like we saw in the last game. But I think he's symbolic of the RCB team where they've just continued to improve, and Faf mentioned that at the toss, that they feel like they're a team on the roll, they're improving the whole time. And Hasaranga's probably been at the centre of that because he gives them so many options through those middle stages, particularly around attacking big name batsmen, and then when he gets through them, he's lethal against the tail, as we saw against Sunrisers.
What a difference 6 months makes, Aakash. Here's a guy who played for them last season and they didn't have the confidence to play him long enough. Now he seems to have gone for big money at an auction, and he seems to now be living up to the international reputation of Hasaranga. What's changed?
See, nothing. He's been a gun player. Whether you admit it or not, the fact is you went for him last season, assuming, believing that he's got what it takes. And I was a little surprised they actually let go of him quite quickly in terms of the team selection because they were playing at Sharjah, back end of that tournament. The ball was turning, gripping. And Wanindu was outstanding for Sri Lanka on similar surfaces just 3 weeks later. So it was a bit of a surprise, but then they invested a lot of faith and money in acquiring his services once again. He's a decent bowler. See, leg spinners, they are attacking options. He bowls slow. He's got a googly. He's not a big turner of the ball, but he lands the ball in the right areas more often than not. And there is a trend that's developed this season where captains are a bit more adventurous with regards to holding back an over or two of spinners for the last 5. Something that didn't really happen earlier. And therefore, purple cap winners, when you look at the list of the last 14 seasons, we had only 2 spinners, Pragyan and Imran Tahir, rest are all pacers. Now, when you see this new list, you see 2 of the top 3 are actually the leg spinners. And Kuldeep is not too far behind either, because he's also bowled in the 18th or the 19th over, once actually the 20th over against the RCB as well. So once you start giving them a bit different kind of responsibility and role, you'll find that people will end up picking up more wickets. And I think this season is a bit of a revelation with regards to how captains have used spinners in the latter half of a T20 innings.
It's fair to say that RCB are not missing Yuzvendra Chahal because of Hasaranga?
You want to start an argument with RCB fans? I think this is a good way of going about it. I think he's obviously fulfilled that role, and you've seen Chahal be so successful at Rajasthan. Hasaranga brings in fielding and batting as well, which obviously is an improvement over Chahal, but
the fielding of Hasaranga also has been interesting in the last few
it's
games.
been an improvement over Chahal. I stand by my statement. Look, you don't want to diminish a great player just because someone else has come in, but Hasaranga's been amazing.
The question would be for RCB fans is, will Hasaranga be effective at the Chinnaswamy, as effective at the Chinnaswamy if the league goes back to its traditional form?
Let's save that for when that happens.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Tell you, as we discuss what has been reason for RCB gaining momentum at the right end, we thought they were slipping away just a bit after the start they had. We must acknowledge the contributions of Rajat Patidar and Mahipal Omror, both of whom have come in at a time where the team was losing, have put in performances when Faf and Kohli haven't, and that is a large part as to why RCB still sit in the playoff position going into their penultimate game of the season. Patidar, Aakash, what a story this is. Guy was with them last year, didn't want him back at the auction, came in only as a replacement player, and really looks the part, has scored some tough runs.
And they rated him very highly, and therefore I was very surprised that they didn't go after him at the auctions, because I spoke to Sanjay Bangar, and he said that he's that gun player. This year it was all about Anuj Rawat and not so much about Rajat Patidar. I was a little perplexed, but then there was an injury and he finds himself back into the RCB unit. And to be fair, he's allowed Virat Kohli the 50 that he scored because he was at the other end scoring at 150 when Virat was going at runner ball, allowed him that kind of time. He's also scored runs in a run chase where he was once again quickly off the blocks and he's looked apart. So Rajat Patidar, 100% is the story. When you look at Tilak Verma, you look at Rajat Patidar. Of course, Rajat hasn't played enough games, but he's impressed one and sundry. So he's got the game, he's got the temperament. He doesn't mind going after the bowlers, and he's perhaps papering over a few cracks when we look at the RCB's top order. Everybody hasn't fired, and that's not a secret anymore.
I like that Aakash actually brought up Anuj Rawat in this, because RCB had some changes in management and coaching staff personnel last season to this. Can it happen, Dan, in spite of how well Patidar did that, management looks at one season and says we could perhaps look at one or two domestic Indian batters who we will back, and that's it. That's the spot you're looking for. And they've seen Rawat and they've said, yeah, okay, this guy's going to be the guy we back, so we don't have room for any other domestic Indian batter. Can you sort of have that sort of thinking which may let one guy lose out?
I think it's one of the resources that you do like to have within the squad is domestic batting, but it's not only RCB, 9 other franchises skip past them. So obviously as for form leading into it wasn't as good, and so people weren't prepared to take the chance on him. But it's surprising when you see a player who's been through that and then come into the team and have so much confidence to just go from ball one. And like Aakash said, he'd allowed Kohli to get to that 50 because how aggressive he was. But in the end, I think franchises potentially fall in love with individuals, and so at the back end of last year, Patidar probably wasn't quite in their thinking, so they're prepared to move on. But it's credit to them that they were prepared to come back to him and give him a chance as well.
All right, we'll see if Rajat Patidar has another important contribution and big game for RCB. You need your big players to step up in big matches, and Shikhar Dhawan's as big as they come in the IPL, especially in recent times. Are we seeing the same Shikhar Dhawan though? He is the leading run scorer for Punjab Kings this season, in a season where we've seen quite a few guys get that 200 to 300 range. Livingston's there, Dhawan's there. No one's getting close to that 450, 500 run mark, which tends to keep you in line for the orange cap. But Dhawan at a strike rate of 122. This is the slightly, you could say, pre-Capitals or end of Sunrisers strike rate that Dhawan had. But if you look at his form, Aakash, patchy. He's got 50s and he's also got single-digit scores. It's not what we've seen of Shikhar Dhawan of late. That strike rate's another conversation. But you have Dhawan, who tends to be prolific every time he shows up. What has the new franchise done for Shikhar Dhawan for you in what you've seen?
Yes, it's not the same Shikhar Dhawan. Effective still. Of course, he's got the runs. He's not looked as fluent or as dominant as we've seen in the last couple of seasons. Now you can put that down to just having a slightly, not a below par season. It's still a good season. I won't say below par, but by his own standards. So everybody's allowed to have a season where you don't just turn up and score runs by the dozens. So that can happen to anyone. And he's got a partner. He used to see sometimes you're just feeding off the energy of the guy who's at the other end. It really helps if you are a part of a good opening combination. Suddenly you also lift yourself, and there is less pressure on you because the other guy is doing the hard yards every now and then when you're not timing the ball that well, and that breathing space that you get just holds you in good stead 6 overs later. But now he finds himself with an opening partner who's not scored runs. There is another opening partner who's just scored runs. He has to do like obviously a lot of heavy lifting, which hasn't really gone down the way he would have liked. See new franchise, new dynamics, the new setup. When you look at the batting order as well, suddenly you realize that okay, we tend to implode quite a few times. So should I go a little slower now? Because I lose my partner anyway, and then we don't last the 20 overs. Our bowlers are batting the last 5 overs. See, there are plenty of things that can actually play on your mind. But Shikhar pays a huge price for his own success. So yes, it's not the same kind of season, but it's still acceptable. It's not a season where you'll point fingers and say, he's not really done anything.
Would you agree with that? Would you say that because Dhawan's my leading run scorer, I won't really point fingers at him, but by his own standards, see, doesn't seem like the Dhawan of previous years. Is that down to generally this confusion in Punjab's batting order, change of partners, or do you think he's done all right?
I don't think that worries Shikhar at all. I think he just goes out and plays. And if you look at those numbers, when he's actually scored, he's played the role that's required. And potentially if he had one more decent innings in him, then it would be the Shikhar Dhawan as advertised. So I don't think I'd read too much into everything that's going on. I think he just plays the game as he sees it and probably in his natural style. So if you had three decent innings at the back end of the season, it'll all come out on the wash that he's had another standard Shikhar Dhawan pretty good year.
If he does that, but if he doesn't do that, and I really want to have this conversation with the two of you, if Punjab lose today, as to how a top order of Dhawan, Agarwal with the kind of form he's been in, Bairstow and Livingston the way he started, and Rajapaksa has been great. Wow, how does everyone come to Punjab and suddenly look off? That's something that I want to ask the two of you. So try and see if that's some homework you want to do on it. Because if they lose today, this is a top order that should not be underperforming. All the questions need to be about their batting, Aakash. Fair to say?
Absolutely. See, they always knew that their bowling is a bit of an issue, and they went in that direction, which is okay. But then I also feel that they should have played at least one more batter. Then it's okay if you allow the oppositions to chase down 220. It's all right, but at least you score 220. So you should have that kind of depth in their batting. They don't have that depth. They do have some destructive batters. But they don't have the depth of what we keep saying that, or rather I keep saying that England has, and that allows them to play a certain brand of cricket. But I have zero idea. See, certain franchises, they react differently. This is one franchise that no captain has actually stayed. Everybody wants to move on. There has to be something that's not right. They tend to make a lot of changes. This season has not been one of those seasons where they made plenty of changes, but there is something still off. What is off? I don't know. You don't know. Only the people who are a part of that dugout will probably throw some light on it because there has to be something that forces people to just say goodbye to Punjab Kings after a couple of years.
Yeah, we tend to get the people who in the dugout 1 year later. We got Wasim Jafar this year. Let's see who we pick up next year, and we'll ask this question of them as well. But game's underway. So at the CCI, what are we looking at as a first inning score for RCB to chase down Punjab? What are they going to be happy with? What are they going to get?
I think they're going to get around 190.
They'll get 190. Gee, okay. Aakash?
See, for this game to be an absolute blockbuster, let them get to 205. It may not happen. It may still not happen. I'm tilting towards Dan, but I want 205. That should be fun.
205. I'll tell you what's not happened. Even though we enter 60 games, we've not had a super over yet. All right.
Please no super over.
I will see if there's any.
I'll take a super over. I'll take a
You'll
super
take
over.
it.
I'm
Yeah, because you are at home,
yeah, I'm a
Aakash.
sucker
Yeah.
I
of good
clock off at
content.
11:30, so no super over.
All right. So do the Punjab Kings. Anyway.
Except Mumbai games.
Yeah, except Mumbai games when the second innings has begun at 11:30. Right, we'll pick up the chat with Daniel Vettori and Aakash Chopra. Join us at halftime on Maruti Suzuki presents ESPN Cricket for T20 timeout powered by IQ 9 5G. Before I leave you, just have a look at the IQ ESPN Cricket for Biggest Fan Challenge. That's all you need to do. Get creative, get witty, and answer the following in 6 words or less. If I were Rohit in a press conference, the first thing that I would say is like the post, comment with hashtag IQ, hashtag ESPN Cricket for, and hashtag Biggest Fan Challenge, and share it on your social media. We'll see you at the end of the Punjab innings.